Hey, guess what? I'm gonna ramble on about books for a while. I didn't start this second channel to enter the BookTube universe, but upon opening the floodgates of, hey, I have thoughts on books, I realized, hey, I've always had thoughts on books and I've just never had a place to share them before. So, thoughts on books, just every now and then, sprinkled tastefully throughout the other chats and stories. After finishing my reading what you recommended to me challenge, I dove into some classics and then some not classics. And basically, I just don't have someone in my everyday life to discuss books with because Matt hasn't read a book since 7th grade. I wish that was a joke, but it's not, y'all. We're very different. So I figure whenever I read a book that gives me something to share about and therefore kind of review, I will compile it into one video until I deem that video long enough to post. That time is now, hence this video. I get that books and reading and book reviews and discussions are not everyone's jam. That's totally okay. If I was trying to make videos that were everyone's jam, I would hate this job. Everything would be strawberry. Maybe. What do you think is the most universally enjoyed jam? Once we go out to like the whole world, I feel like it would actually be a mango chutney or something. I don't know. Also, my poll on whether I should give you the titles in a video up front at the beginning or, you know, sprinkle them throughout got very mixed reviews. So I've decided that the list of titles will be in the description with some chapter markers, so you can jump around if you please, or you can choose to be surprised. Cool? Good stuff. Reminder about my very simple book rating system. For me, it is just a yes, I feel like this book was worth my time and therefore I would recommend it to other people, or no. Not that. The first things that I read following What You Were Looking For Is in the Library, sorry I didn't say that title out loud, it confused a lot of people, were 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, which is a beautiful name. Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. Thank you to the person who recommended this specific title of Baldwin's. He's quite a prolific author and there are a lot of choices under his name, so it was good to have like a start with this one thing. There are similarities between these two books, not the story, but the writing style, that make it really coincidental to me that I read them back to back. I'm tempted to say that people don't write like this anymore, but that's an unfair assumption because I haven't read enough modern literature to actually know that. These would both be considered classics by my system at least. 100 Years of Solitude was 1967, I believe, and Giovanni's Room was 1953? 1956. Both of them talk of the future and then of memories, so you as the reader are never quite sure where you've entered the story. Are we there with Aureliano as he faces the firing squad and the story that we read is in the past? Or are we in the past getting a glimpse of the future? Are we there with David at the window remembering his relationship with Giovanni, or are we jumping through time with him? Is it memory or is it an ever-changing present? They're both really light on dialogue too, though Garcia even more so than Baldwin, choosing to tell you the story even to the point of telling you that someone said something rather than telling you what that person actually said, yeah? That means when they do actually use dialogue in the short exchanges of Garcia's or Giovanni's passionate monologues, it stands out. It's very purposeful and meaningful. They're also both the style of writer who can tell you horrific, graphic things without disgusting you. I find this to be a rarity nowadays. We have become entrenched in realistic graphic scenes in a way that honestly makes me really sad. You see this on screen. No longer can someone be shot in a movie and you just see a red stain spread out over their shirt as they collapse. Now we have to see this realistic portrayal of what a gunshot does to a human body, as though that's not a traumatic image that no one should ever have to see. It's as though somewhere along the line it was decided that you wouldn't feel enough for a character's death if you didn't see it in the most horrific way possible, but I think that's just doing the exact opposite. hardening us to graphic imagery so that it has to get worse and worse to have any sort of impact. You can see story makers wrestling in this endless competition to outdo each other. And what's so sad to me is that it doesn't matter how horrifically you see someone die or suffer on screen, or how horrifically you can visualize it through the words on a page. If you didn't care about the character and the story, then you won't care. In theater, violence used to always occur off stage, with someone running on to tell the characters and the audience what had just happened. And that was enough for them because they were invested in the story. They didn't need to see the blood and the gore to care about what had happened. Theoretically. Maybe audiences were actually bored as crap with the lack of violence, and that's why executions were public. I don't know, I'm not a historian and I wasn't alive then. Speculation. In my freshman Intro to Theater class in college, the teacher spoke about how theater is not just supposed to entertain, but also to disturb. And I think nowadays we tend to give disturb a negative connotation. To be disturbed is synonymous with aghast, alarmed, or even horrified. But I think originally, disturbed was simply to be altered or interfered with, i.e. if you bump into a stack of books and they move a little, even if they don't fully fall over, you've disturbed the stack of books. So the idea is not that theater should horrify or alarm or disgust you, but that a play, this outer force, should move an audience member, should alter them in some way. You should leave the theater a little different than when you came in, shifted just a touch, or hey, maybe a ton, from your original spot. This is the way I'm affected by a book like 100 Years of Solitude. I am disturbed, I am moved, I am forever a little bit changed from having read it without having been horrified or disgusted, or made so uncomfortable that I had to leave in the middle. And y'all, there is so much stuff in this book. Like, this is not child's play. Do not give this to a child to read. I finished reading it, opened YouTube, literally like less than an hour later, and there was a trailer for the new series, I think it is, that's coming out for this. And I was like, first of all, that's very coincidental. Second of all, it looks amazing. And third of all, I will not be watching it. Because I can read that stuff. I can read it in the way Garcia wrote it, with such frankness and straightforwardness and honesty and just plainness and sadness. But I cannot watch a modern rendition of it, because in making it beautiful and visual and realistic to the story, they will make it graphic. I don't know how they couldn't. Like, again, so much stuff in this book. I want to do the Stefan thing, but I'd have to bleep out so much of it. This book has everything. Murder, famine, war, illness, insanity. And it's a yes for me. It is a heartbreaking story presented patiently and without melodrama. Beautiful. I think this is the best thing I've read since Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Totally different book there, but like, I enjoyed them both in very different ways. And Giovanni's Room, also a yes. A lot of people should read this book. It's a fascinating example, for me at least, of a story in which you do not like any of the characters, but you feel empathy for all of them, which I think is also something we struggle with nowadays. This idea that you can dislike a person and still feel empathy for them because they are a human being just like you. The next book I read was this one. And yo, I know I said I like a long title, but this one is too long. Makes me skip over saying it, even in my head. Although in all fairness, that might just be because my American ass doesn't immediately know how to pronounce the word Guernsey.
Guernsey.
Huh, I got it right. Assuming you can trust Google, which I don't know nowadays. The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Marianne Schaeffer, and Annie Barrows. That's not a real criticism though, that's just like a silly little me thing. This book was great. I love the all letters format. I think it really makes the reader have to engage more and use their brain to construct images and fill in the gaps. Active reading rather than passive, you know? Also, I spoke in a video before, or you could say I ranted several times, about very serious books with absolutely no humor in them. And I asked if anyone could give examples of a serious or dramatic book that still features the balance of positive emotion. This is a great example. For those who don't know, although I feel like most people do since there's been a movie and everything, the setting of this book is World War II just ended. Like, just. But we enter the story immediately with a rather light tone, with light mentions of the war, and the very, very sad and even horrific nature of what these characters have just gone through and what they continue to go through is presented to you slowly as the story progresses. They tell these stories that make you want to cry, or just actually make you cry. I think I cried twice while reading this book, and yet still turn around and make a joke, or have a pleasant moment, play, find enjoyment, laugh about something. And therefore, I felt very connected to every character. I felt like they were multifaceted and real, and I really got to know them. Humor! You can be serious and humorous in the same story. Levity does not distract from a sad or scary or dramatic plot. It balances and enhances it. Thank you for coming to my TED Chat. Oh, and it's absolutely a yes for me. Also, this is both sad and a little bit reassuring, but this is the author's first and only book, and apparently she passed away before it was even published, which is why her niece is credited as the second author because she had to do some rewrites. Which, of course, sad that she didn't get to see it put out and read and so loved, but also reassuring for me as a person who constantly feels like they're running out of time. She had never written or published a book before, and she was still able to do that at the very end of her life. So you know what? It is never too late to achieve something. A motto I need to remember constantly. After that, I read 7 plays, all of which were incredible and moved me a little bit from where I was before I read them, but we shall not go over those because I feel like plays are just such a niche topic or reading interest. So few people know plays, much less read them for funsies outside of like a connection to an actual production. Does anyone here read plays? Have you ever read a play? I recommend it because I have read hundreds, literally, and a whole bunch of them have moved me drastically. But yeah, we shall move on from those for now. My next read was a reread, Round 2 of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, in case you didn't know. I'm pretty sure the first time I read this book, it was on my phone. There was this whole period starting from when I was a server at Olive Garden all the way through to the end of my cruise ship contracts, where I would just read books on my phone using like the Books app. And like not the small books, y'all. I read Les Mis, I read Dracula, I read a few Jane Austens on these tiny screen-sized pages, and I think nowadays that would give me a headache. But reading on my phone was better than not reading at all, so worth it. Anyway, this time I had the pleasure of reading this absolutely beautiful copy that's illustrated with flowers throughout and has these fun inserts, like an invitation to the Netherfield Ball, Mary's sheet music, instructions for how to play whist. They even give you a copy of Mr. Darcy's letter to Lizzie. And y'all, why is it so satisfying to hold a letter of this shape and size? Like, modern envelopes do not do this for me. I was like curled up in bed reading when I got to this part, and as soon as I took this letter out and opened it up, I was transported. Might as well have lit a candle. I was freaking there. Mr. Wickham is the son of a very respectable man. They even made sure to continue the writing onto the envelope and make it exactly 2 pages like it should be according to the book. The attention to detail! I feel like I got so much more out of this second reading than I did out of the first. Like, I appreciated the writing style and the wit and the humor and all of it. I'll not go on too much about it though. It's a classic, it's well known. Obviously, it's a yes for me, highly recommend. Indulge me in just a few thoughts that I had on this reread though. Jane's character is kind of annoying in the book. Like, her Cinderella optimism, always seeing the best in everyone personality, just gets frustrating at times. You're like, honey, oh, honey, be realistic. In the 2005 movie version, which is my personal favorite, they take a few lines from other characters and give them to Mary, which is like fair enough because Mary almost never speaks in the book. But the 2 lines that they give her, I really do prefer on their original characters. I think a ball is a perfectly irrational way to make new acquaintance. It's actually Caroline Bingley in the book who says, "It surely would be much more rational if conversation rather than dancing were made the order of the day." Because she's trying to be a snarky little bitch. And then the other one is, "What are men compared to rocks and mountains?" Which Lizzie says in the book. And it's just so on brand and witty and bitter in the moment. But alas, Mary gets it in the movie and it kind of turns an amazing line into just a line. I also adore the part near the end of the book when Jane is asking Lizzie when her feelings towards Mr. Darcy first started to change, and Lizzie straight up goes, "The moment I saw Pemberley, yes girl, yes." She's joking, but it's hilarious. Enough on Pride and Prejudice. It's a classic for a reason, kiddos. Give it a read. In all of the bookstores that I popped into in England last year, which was quite a few, bookstores are my refuge. There was typically a whole shelf or even a whole wall dedicated to P.G. Wodehouse. I hope I'm saying that right. I don't know how else it could be said. Wodehouse. No. And the name was slightly familiar to me. The title of some of his books were kind of familiar, although in retrospect, I think I was just seeing the word Blandings and associating it with the movie Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream Home, which is based on a novel by a completely different author. Anyway, I decided I wanted to read some of his works since he is so lauded over there, but I would just do that when I got back home. Only back in Merca, we do not have walls devoted to P.G. Wodehouse. We do not have shelves devoted to him. So I did not find any of his books until we went to Bart's Books in Ojai, where I found a few used copies. Ojai. It's a requirement. I got this chunk of a one, which is 3 books in one. Blandings Castle, which was a collection of short stories, and then Summer Lightning and Heavy Weather. And all of these books roll into each other. Like, you can really just read this cover to cover like it's one story, because the short stories end and the next one starts, and you're like, okay, there's a slightly different, like, plot going on here, but this is just a continuation. And then the end of the short stories kind of rolled straight into Summer Lightning, and Heavy Weather literally picked up like 24 hours after Summer Lightning. So it kind of just felt like it was one big book. Overall, quite enjoyed these. Definitely a yes if you enjoy British humor, if you like a lighthearted story, if you just want to read something fun and witty. His writing didn't, like, strike me in the face with force as absolutely, quintessentially, delightfully British the way that Douglas Adams's writing did, but still, like, every page, or at least every other page, there was some line on it that gave me pause because it just tickled me pink. Let me see if I can just open it and find one. Lady Constance spurned the grass with a frenzied foot. Like, why does that tickle me so much? I don't know. You got the combo of the word spurned and frenzied in one sentence. She would have preferred to kick her brother with it, but one has one's breeding. Even just the continual reference to Lord Emsworth's younger son, Freddie, whom he absolutely detests, with no mention ever in this entire brick of who his older son is. I don't know, it's just hilarious. But in like a light chuckle to yourself kind of way. Maybe you had to be there. Wodehouse makes you feel like you, as the reader, are in on the joke. You are in on every single joke. Lots of fun. The next one is a book my younger sister passed off on me when I was visiting her last. The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood. I've been wanting to read some Atwood. Obviously, she's very lauded as an incredible writer, but I didn't really want to tackle that giant of hers, The Handmaid's Tale. I actually read the script for the pilot of the show, and that's about it for me. I don't want to watch the show. I don't want to read the whole book. It's just a bit much for my mental state. So I was excited to try another one of her works, and also just lightly intrigued coming into it, because the reason my sister gave this to me was that she found it boring and stopped reading after, I think like 75 pages, because I found her bookmark. When I have such a direct and specific opinion given to me about a book, I'm always more fascinated going into it, because there's that added layer of, will I agree or will I be on completely the opposite page? Well, I don't agree. I was immediately intrigued because the book is split up abnormally. It's not chapter 1, chapter 2, etc. When an author does something like that, I'm always pulled in because I want to find out if it was a gimmick, if there's really no reason in the story itself and it feels like the author was just trying something, or if it was a very specific choice. So this one is quite complex. There's the book, and then there's a book within the book, and then there's a story within the book, and also supplementary found materials, mostly newspaper articles. And they're all mixed together, so the timeline is so sloshy, and you get clues about things at the beginning that you don't even realize are clues, that you don't realize matter, and then you get to the end and you're like, oh my god, what? Like when an author has me going, what? And then skipping back to the beginning to go like, wait, hold on. Did I read that correctly at the beginning? Is that how everything lines up? That's a good book. Atwood is such a good writer that you don't really notice it. And I think this is how I tend to feel about a lot of more classic authors who have stood the test of time. I can read their books without ever being distracted by their writing ability or technique. Like, I, for one, am a person who will be incredibly pulled out of the story if I read a sentence and go, that wasn't grammatically correct. That could have been phrased in a much more logical or flowing way. Now, there are some authors who write so beautifully or so wittily that I'm distracted in a positive way. Like, I'm stopping to reread a sentence or even a whole paragraph because I'm just so delighted by how it was written. And there wasn't really any of that in this book. There was never a moment where I was like, dang, that's a stunning sentence. But the writing was just so thorough and complex and deep, just so good that I was never taken out of the story. I was always in it, invested, moving forward. Also, she assumes her readers are intelligent, which is something I always appreciate in an author and something I struggle with as a writer. I want to over-explain, I want to make sure that I've gotten my point across and that everyone understands, but that can end up alienating readers who are actually paying attention and remembering things and thinking it all through. I definitely prefer reading books that assume I'm paying attention. It gets a yes. And the last one for this round, a bit of a random classic that I just happened to find at a used bookstore recently, The Scarlet Pimpernel by Baroness Orczy? Yes, that's really the author's name. Baroness. This title always stands out to me because I feel like I know it already. Specifically, my memory tells me that there was some classic movie made of it featuring Danny Kaye. I did a quick search on that prior to starting the book because if that memory were true, it would mean that this is probably a lighthearted and very witty comedy, and I didn't want to go into it expecting that and then find out it's actually a sweeping epic or an intense melodrama. So I was right about it being made into a movie. There's like a 1934 version and a 1982 version, and I was very wrong about the comedy and the Danny Kaye of it all. I have to be thinking about something else altogether. I think maybe my brain was blending the Inspector General and the court jester together, because, like, you know, same sort of title style. The Scarlet Pimpernel is a historical drama. Huzzah! I also learned in this very quick search that it actually started as a play in 1905 before being turned into a novel in 1908. Cool. But actually it's gonna be a no for me. Not because it was, like, terrible per se, or I didn't have a decently good time reading it, but because the entire time I was reading it, I was like, you could kind of be reading something better than this. For starters, I read the introduction. Does anyone else feel absolutely obligated to always read an introduction if there is one? And was fascinated by how lightly negative it was. Like, usually introductions are people sort of lightly fanning over the author and trying to sound super smart themselves. Not a criticism, just an observation. This one was more of a very blunt discussion of the author and the book and both of their flaws. And I'm glad I read it because I learned that this book is not at all historically accurate. The story surrounds the French Revolution, not just in a, like, history as a backdrop kind of way, but, like, inseparable. The story is the French Revolution. And according to the person who wrote the introduction, this book is not even slightly historically accurate in any way, shape, or form, which is fine theoretically. I don't ever expect a historical fiction to be accurate. It's labeled fiction for a reason. But this one is a little overboard in taking liberties. I think if you went into it not knowing that it was so inaccurate, you would come out of it with some very incorrect views of the French Revolution. Throw in a little, shall we call it, light racism, and then the fact that I don't think the Baroness is actually a good writer. She's extremely repetitive. She explains 3 times in a scene, in rising levels of floweriness, how a room is completely empty, only then to tell you that it's not. She describes one character as fox-like pretty much every single time he enters the narrative. No variation in adjectives. And it's kind of just more of that all the way through. So yeah, it wasn't unenjoyable to read. I wasn't miserable or anything, but it definitely wasn't great in my opinion. Would have been fine to skip. And that is where we're ending today, because that was all of the books in my random little to-read pile. 'Twas pretty varied for me, and I enjoyed that variety. Although still mostly classic, I guess. Nothing super recent. Even this one was written in the 90s, so I think Guernsey is the most recent one, which is why I'm gonna try another round of reading modern literature next, and I have sort of a fun little challenge I'm doing for myself for no real reason other than why not? I hope you enjoyed this chat and that you will add your thoughts in the comments. Continue the discussion. Tell me, have you read any of these? Do you agree or disagree with my opinions on them? And if you didn't enjoy this chat, then my god, I hope you left by now. There are better things you can be doing with your time than watching a YouTube video that's not up your alley and then complaining to me that you didn't like it. Also, tell me what you're reading right now. Is it a yes or a no for you? Are you enjoying it so far? Can you tell yet? I'd love to hear. So long, farewell, and toodaloo! Wanna know a secret? I filmed this whole video 2 days ago, and then realized that when my hair is in braids, the bottom of the braid sits right on the top of the mic and goes through the whole thing. I definitely prefer to read books that assume I'm paying attention. The fun thing is that I already knew that information from previous experience, and my brain just chose to not remind me that I knew that information. Good times, y'all. Are you so cozy in here? He's been keeping me company. Yo, I'm gonna have to do more videos here. I feel like I am, ooh, light, angelically framed. Should I have cleaned my glasses prior to starting this? That's not gonna be enough information. Phew! Sakes alive. Why is this room still so echoey?